Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
The Hassan residence was a large, imposing structure with 8 Roman-inspired columns supporting the lawning above the main entrance. The architecture symbolized the strength and power of the family. Despite her advanced age, Charlotte insisted on giving birth to another child so that he could continue with the upper family line. However, 33 years had passed, and the young master of the family showed no interest in marrying. His parents were almost 80 years old. They were eager to see him settle down and have children of their own before they passed away. The elderly couple decided to make Ren a match. Ren had come home that night and noticed a young woman sitting next to his mother. The young woman's face lit up when she saw him. Then Charlotte beckoned to her son and said, "Ren, come here. There is someone I would like you to meet." He knew instantly what his mother's intention was, and calmly approached his mother and sat down next to her. "This is Sophie Liamson, Emmett's niece. She is 26 years old this year and is a world-class piano teacher. I think a nice and suitable young lady like her is a good match for you." The old lady. He seemed to have decided to take Sophie in as his daughter-in-law. Charlotte was particularly anxious because she would bring home any girl she considered as a potential partner for her ever-demanding son. "It's an honor to meet you, Ren. I've heard a lot about you from Uncle Emmett," Sophie greeted shyly, but was secretly delighted. She couldn't believe Charlotte had noticed her. She was invited to the Hassan residence to meet Ren in person due to Emmett's efforts to curry favor with the old woman. Sophie had arrived at the Hassan residence in the early afternoon. Half the day had passed with Charlotte and Harold. Moreover, she had impressed them by skillfully maneuvering into intellectual conversation and displaying charming etiquette. It was safe to say that the old couple approved of her. Ren smiled and said, "Nice to meet you, Sophie. Welcome to the Hassan residence." Sophie misinterpreted his smile as a sign that he had feelings for her. Although she had only seen him on TV, he looked even more handsome in person. In addition, his regal air did his fainting. Her heart began to pound. She told herself that she should seize this opportunity and make a good impression. She could become the next lady of the house if she can pull it off. Moreover, she could become the wife of the future vice president of the country. This might be the most crucial moment of her life, and she couldn't afford to let it slip through her fingers. So, Charlotte hurriedly excused herself and muttered something about checking the dishes in the kitchen. His intention was to allow Ren and Sophie to spend time together alone. Consequently, they were left alone on the couch alone with the other as company. Sophie's hands were nervously intertwined as her gaze fell on the man on the couch and her. She couldn't hide her admiration for him and said, "I hope it's not too bold of me to say this, but I've always admired you, Ren. I hope I have the opportunity to learn from you and do for my own flaws." "There is no need for you to be so modest, Miss Liamson. It's very well done in its own right," Ren replied sympathetically. She was more willing to impress him, and continued, "I heard that you have a piano in your studio, and I was wondering if I could have the honor of playing you a song." He glanced at his watch. "I'm sorry, but maybe next time. There's something I need to discuss with my dad right now." Then, Ren got up from the sofa and walked out of the living room. Sophie was dejected by his answer. Even though he didn't look arrogant or cold, she could tell from how he looked at her that he was reserved. He didn't seem to mind chatting with her, but that was it. Ren had no intention of engaging in a deeper or more sincere conversation. It was accurate because it was so inscrutable that one would hesitate to investigate it further. However, that might have been what made it so attractive. He was a powerful man who cared about people. His charisma came from his leadership ability and his belief in standing up for what was inherently good. Unfortunately, his devotion to his political career was nowhere to be found in his quest for romance. She clenched her fists. His uncle had given him this opportunity to climb the social ladder, and he would be doing him a disservice if she gave up because of Ren's initial apathy. In addition, she had more chances than any other girl because Harold and Charlotte favored her. Meanwhile, Ren went upstairs and noticed that his dad was watching TV. Harold enjoyed his solitude while watching programs of Fragments of Life. "Hi, Dad," Ren greeted him as he opened the door. He walked into the room and sat opposite him. Harold looked at him expectantly and asked, "There you are, Ron. Do you know Miss Liamson?" "Yes, I have." "What do you think?" "She's an exceptional girl," Ren replied flatly as he poured Harold a cup of tea. "Ron, there's a saying that one should honor one's parents." Harold continued, "Your mom and I aren't getting any younger. We have nothing more to ask of you except to settle down and start a family." These words had become boring after repeating them so many times, but he still sounded like himself saying them every time he saw Ren. Ren nodded and replied, thinking about settling down. "Really?" Harold's eyes flashed. "Yes. Ideally within a year," Ron said fluently. Harold breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that Charlotte chose the right girl this time. Ren has only seen Miss Liamson once and already plans to marry her. Now that he had received the desired answer, the old man was relaxed and changed the subject. "In that case, you should focus on the next election. You are highly regarded by the general public, so there is hope that you will be re-elected." He was thrilled that his son's political career was taking off and he had reached heights he had not been able to reach during his prime. He could only hope that such glory would be passed down from generation to generation. However, Ren frowned slightly and pointed out, "I'm going to go with the flow, Dad. To be honest, I'm not too worried about the election. All you have to do is keep up the good work, and everything will work out for you," Harold replied, and his ambition was evident in his eyes. "Your political achievements are more than enough to secure your re-election. You're not cowering all of a sudden, are you?" Ren's brows furrowed as he replied softly, "No." "Good," Harold declared. He proudly evaluated his son, adding, "Ron, I know I can always count on you. I am confident that you will win the next election." At 6:30 p.m. that night, Ruka and her parents arrived at the restaurant's private dining room. A middle-aged couple and a young man stood at the side of the table. Robert's old friend, Atticus Kowalski, was also present and sat at the table with them. Ruka assessed the situation in front of her and wondered if she had just entered a matchmaking session. They were introduced after they took their excrement. Atticus wasted no time delving into the respective family backgrounds of the young man and Ruka. Then, he allowed the parents to discuss what a big party Ruka and this young man would be. The young man in question called himself Levi Goldman. He was nearly 6 feet tall, well-dressed, and seemed to be a firm person. However, he hadn't been able to take eyes away from Ruka since he entered the room. Ruka looked like a princess straight out of a fairy tale, with her bright ebony hair and delicate features. Her ethereal beauty set her apart from all the other girls Levi had ever met. He exchanged a brief glance with his mother, indicating that the evening had gotten off to a good start. Then, they exchanged courtesies and made a little talk. Levi noticed the empty seat next to Ruka and occupied it while offering to pour her tea. Contrast, Ruka could tell how much Claire wanted her to get along with this man. He did his best to hide his exasperation. Dinner was prepared just as she had suspected. She wondered if her parents actually had so little faith in her ability to find a husband as they did to accept him. Matchmaker in his own hands. "Did you ever consider how uncomfortable this is for me?" When Levi's parents asked Ruka what she did, Claire happily replied, "She works in the translation department." Ruka raised an amused eyebrow and corrected her, "Actually, Mom, I don't work there anymore from today. I resign. Claire looked at her in disbelief. What do you mean, you quit? Why? Ruka knew Levi's parents loved her, but she didn't need their approval. Therefore, she decided that there was no better time than now to dash his hopes. She shrugged indifferently and said, slurring, no reason. I guess I was tired of working. Claire was puzzled by her daughter's apathy and demanded, you can't leave your job in the moment, Ruka. Besides, didn't you just get the job? How can you get tired so quickly? You should at least talk to us before you quit. Wicked glee struck Ruka when she saw how agitated her mother was. She argued petulantly, I just got tired, okay? You know how much I enjoy lazing around at home. Do you think I'm cut out for the working world when I can't even wash my own clothes and dishes? She added defiantly, you and Dad spoiled me, remember? Claire thought she might faint on the spot. He couldn't understand why Ruka was acting badly tonight when she would never have behaved that way. What will the guests think? She believed Levi was a lovely young man and hoped that he and Ruka could become a couple. Levi couldn't be a bad match for Ruka if an old family friend introduced him. Ruka. Robert gave her a cold look. What are you saying? Ruka noticed her father's dismay and feigned his innocence while exclaiming, I really did. I quit my job. Levi, who was sitting next to him, didn't think he would mind Ruka staying home all day instead of going to work. She was too pretty to be exposed to the rigors of working-class society. He chiggled in, Mr. and Mrs. Singed, don't take this too seriously. Personally, I find Ruka's honesty quite endearing. His parents seemed to disagree as they exchanged bewildered glances. They were clearly disappointed by Ruka's immaturity. They didn't want to wait for their daughter-in-law's hand and foot. Levi's mother cleared her throat. Levi, don't interrupt Mr. and Mrs. Singed. It's rude. He didn't want his son to seem too cautious. Over dinner, it became clear that Levi was willing to prove that he could take care of Ruka. However, Ruka gave him orders throughout the night. Claire was furious, but she didn't dare to throw fire in front of the guests. When did Ruka become so infuriatingly unreasonable? However, Levi didn't seem to mind being treated like a servant. His parents began to wonder if he had any dignity. From their perspective, this pairing was a complete failure. Ruka was beautiful, but her personality was horrible. They couldn't risk their son becoming a personal slave to her if they decided to marry. Ruka breathed a sigh of relief when she noticed the thunderous expressions on the faces of Levi's parents. Meanwhile, the dining room of the Husson residence was filled with a warm and lively atmosphere. Charlotte seemed to be having a great time chatting with Sophie. She bombarded the girl with questions, and when Charlotte ran out of topics, she told stories about Ren's childhood and her journey to raise him. One might assume that she mentioned an ogre if they didn't know better. According to Charlotte's observation, Ren was inept with women, which probably explained why he had never brought a girlfriend home. Other men his age already had families of their own, and he asked his parents to wait until he finally settled down. Ron, could you pass the salad to Sophie? She can't get that far, Charlotte reminded her son to be a little more proactive in these things. Ron put down the fork and grabbed the salad bowl. Then, he placed it in front of Sophie and said, Here you go, Miss Liam's son. Charlotte almost rolled her eyes. You can at least put some salad on your plate. On the contrary, Sophie was certainly disappointed. She expected Ren to serve her a portion of the salad, but he gave her the whole plate. He could have been gentlemanly, but he wasn't romantic. At that point, Ren put down his utensils and said to his parents, Excuse me, but I must go back to work. Maybe you can take Sophie. It's always good to have company, no matter how short the journey is, Charlotte interjected. I really appreciate it, Ron, Sophie chimed in before he could decline. He nodded. Very good. Come with me, then. Sophie's eyes lit up instantly. I will be excited to be in the same car as him. It would be the perfect setting for them to meet. She had planned everything because she intended to hold his hand and tell him clearly that she liked him. This was her time to shine. And she wouldn't let it slip through her fingers. They strolled under the night sky to the garage next to the garden where 4 black limousines were parked. Elijah came to them and respectfully greeted Ren, Mr. Hassan. Elijah, did you mention earlier that you have something important to report? Asked Ren as he stared at his assistant. Elijah initially frowned, but soon understood and nodded as he said, yes, that's right. It's crucial and I need to let you know right away, or it will become even more chaotic. Well, then. Let's have this discussion in the car, okay? Ren then looked at Sophie and said, I'm sorry, Miss Liam's son, but it looks like you'll have to take the other car. I promise you that I will not be a bother. Sophie made a feeble effort to save her chance to ride in the same car with him. Miss Liam's son, the business matters I am about to discuss with Mr. Hassan are strictly confidential. Please understand that you cannot be present for confidentiality purposes, Elijah said solemnly. Sophie hesitated after hearing this. She nodded slowly and said softly, okay, then. I'll leave you both. The bodyguards opened the door of another car and let Sophie in. When the door closed, she looked out the window and watched Ren and Elijah get into the car in front of her. It was only after Ren was inside the car that he let out a sigh of tiredness. Elijah couldn't help it. He laughed as he asked, did Mrs. Hassan give you a hard time, sir? Ren sighed and pinched the space between his eyebrows. I'm afraid this will be a recurring phenomenon until I bring a girlfriend home to meet them. You can always pick a day and bring Miss Singed home, Elijah suggested. The thought of this provoked a flash of concern in Ren's eyes. Harold's words had added a new weight to his shoulders. He had no intention of running for re-election as vice president in the upcoming election. Still, Harold seemed determined to make it happen. Harold and Charlotte had reached the golden years of their lives. They would be unable to cope with shocking news such as Ren's sudden withdrawal from the upcoming election. Similarly, I had to keep this in mind. However, he muttered wearily, hopefully that day will come sooner rather than later. The 4 black SUVs in front joined the convoy as it began to walk out the doors. The entire fleet looked intimidating as it sped through the night. Sophie concluded that it was empowering to ride in the back seat of a car that was part of a convoy. The mere thought of all the luxuries she could enjoy if she married the vice president made her heart skip a beat, and she couldn't wait to make her dream come true. Meanwhile, Ruka and her parents said goodbye to Levi and the others at the restaurant. Claire blurted out furiously after they were out of earshot, "What are you doing, Ruka?" "Mom, do I have to remind you that you tried to set a trap for me with someone without my permission?" Ruka joked and smiled as she stripped herself of her unreasonable behavior from the restaurant. Claire was angry with her daughter. "You embarrassed us in front of those people. Did you notice how furious Levi's parents were while you gave orders to Levi all night?" "Don't be angry, Mom. What makes you think I won't be able to find a good husband while I'm still young? Also, I want to marry someone I truly love, not out of desperation," Ruka convinced her. Claire winding up her arm. Claire gawked at Ruka, and her eyes were wide with disbelief. "Are you in a relationship? Who is it? Why haven't we met him yet?" Robert was equally puzzled as he cast a curious glance at Ruka. Ruka nodded with a blushing face and confessed, "Yes, I am in love with someone. That's why she behaves as she does in the restaurant." Claire's exasperation grew along with her understanding. "You could have informed us earlier. Tell me more. I'm curious about him and his family background. Is he also handsome?" Ruka pursed her lips. She wasn't sure how to answer her mother's questions, but when she did, it sounded. He's a successful man who's out of reach. Then what does he do for a living? Claire pressed impatiently. However, Ruka simply shook her head in response. I will inform you once it is official. We just started seeing each other. In that case, you better make sure he is trustworthy. I don't want you to bring home a hooligan, Claire warned her daughter. Ruka texted Ren as soon as he got home that night. What are you doing? She didn't expect him to answer so soon, but he did, and her heart skipped a beat. He texted me, I just got home. You? Me too. Guess what? My parents actually arranged an appointment for me today. She lay on her bed as she waited for his possible answer. Ruka was shocked by Ren's call and almost dropped her phone. He had just passed him through when he heard his deep, seductive voice ask, What happened? I've upset his parents and my parents have given me a good fight, as he said quietly with one hand over her mouth. Ren chuckled, looked pleased with her comments, and joked, You should probably comfort them. I did, and I told them I was in love with someone, she said shyly. But I didn't tell them it was you. Do you really want to marry me so much, Ruka? He asked in a rough voice. Ruka blinked slowly when an answer appeared in his head, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he asked indifferently, Do you want me to marry you? I can, I'll make you my wife right now, Ren said in his low, lustful tone. She comforted him with lips curled into a smile, low drama. You are aware that I have nowhere to run, right? We can always postpone marriage until the right time comes. He laughed in response, As you wish. The sound of his laughter made her heart skip a beat. There was something comforting and reassuring about talking to him on the phone. His deep voice provoked in her a familiar warmth that made her want to take a cold shower. She wished to keep him on the line so the conversation could go on forever. Have you showered? Are you in bed? She asked suddenly. If he said yes, then she could talk to him a little more. Yes, and I'm in bed, he replied with his attractive accent. Similarly, Ruka was in bed with the sheets on her. The bass appeal of Ren's voice made her skin shudder and he had an epiphany. Are you going to sleep soon? Don't. Ruka loved bedtime stories and was sure she would be the happiest woman on the planet if she could persuade Ren to tell her one before she fell asleep. I wonder if you can tell me a bedtime story. I'm having trouble falling asleep right now, she spoke like a child. She wanted nothing more than to fall asleep with his voice. What story do you like? He asked indulgently as if her words had touched his heart. Anything, she joked happily. I will listen to any story you tell me. You can also sing me a lullaby if you prefer. She laughed mischievously and did not hesitate to make her requests. He paused for a few seconds as he considered his options, then said matter-of-factly, It's a lullaby. Ruka had just been joking and was surprised that he agreed to do it. His fingers fluttered to his lips as he asked, Are you serious, Run? Are you really going to sing me a lullaby? It's not like I didn't do it before when you were a kid. Ron commented lovingly.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.